Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate your recognition. This is an issue that I feel very strongly about. I am a Southerner. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and in my young years I witnessed Jim Crow laws. I witnessed African Americans being relegated to the worst seats at the sports arenas, not being able to go to schools, not being able to get jobs, and being discriminated against as second-class citizens. I saw white and colored drinking fountains and restrooms, and things that, when you think about it, they shouldn't have existed in a modern era. Things that existed 100 years after the war that Mr. King talks about. The war that might have freed the slaves but didn't give them real economic and social freedom. They remained enslaved through de jure laws known as Jim Crow laws in this nation until 1964, and the ramifications of those laws and the slavery that we had in this country continue to this day. I have read the remarks of some of the gentlemen who are going to testify, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clegg writes in his presentation, "No one will dispute that slavery and Jim Crow were horrible and inhumane." Remember, one of our senators said Strom might have been right. That was just a year ago. A lot of people don't understand the connection, and they don't understand why this country is the way it is, and they don't want to apologize. I've introduced House Res 64 that calls for our country to apologize for the institutions of slavery and for Jim Crow. Some say, well, this doesn't involve, nobody's around today who had slaves. The Senate apologized for lynching. Nobody's around today that did lynching. But it was our country that did it and our government that did it, and our government sanctioned it, and it's an original sin of this country that needs to be expiated, and it can only be expiated by an official act of this nation. 4 states have had issued apologies: Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, and Alabama. Others have considered it. For the United States of America not to issue an apology, Britain has done it, the Episcopal Church has done it. For the United States of America that sanctioned slavery, that permitted it, that fostered it, that benefited from it, would be wrong. It's the beginning of a dialogue that can improve this nation, because the greatest problem this nation still has today is racial conflict. It exists not just in Memphis, Tennessee, but it exists in New York City and Harlem, in Roxbury and Boston, in the south side of Chicago, in East St. Louis. It exists throughout this country, and we need to deal with that issue. The idea of a study of reparations that Mr. Conyers offers is a study, and it should be studied in what effects we can make to ameliorate conditions, economic and social, that have disadvantaged the minority population in our nation. I represent a district that's majority African American. Some people in my hometown say that I am too black in the way I think. Well, they haven't looked at my state Senate record for the last 24 years and been aware of where I've been, with felon voting rights, with Dr. King's birthday, with jobs programs, with public hospitals and public education. I guess I've always been, quote unquote, too black. But for people who think that, they are unaware of what's going on in America today. And we need to get our act together, and we need to accept the grievances, look at the grievances of the past and apologize and have a dialogue and go on and try to have some efforts to make our country better. And some of that deals with not just social justice that my fellow colleagues on the other side of this hall or aisle would talk about, but economic justice. And without economic justice, you can't really have social justice. You can't have it. The fact is, we lived through Jim Crow laws, and those effects are here today. People who were in separate classrooms are teachers today. And can they teach equally? The classroom facilities are vestiges of a separate institution where African American children got used textbooks and didn't get the new schoolrooms and opportunities. All those things need to change. I commend Chairman Conyers for his efforts over the years. I don't know that he has an exact thought of what his study would bring about, but a study is a good thing. And before you have a study, I would submit you need an apology, because it begins a dialogue. And until this country faces the problems that we have and the conflicts that we have, which are great, and I think I'm unique in having the opportunity to see them because I have been so involved in my community and seen them, that we need to find a way to start that dialogue and bring this country together. We do not have equal justice. There's a disparity in wealth between wealthy whites and poor whites, but it's even greater among whites and African Americans as this disparity in wealth grows and grows and grows, because we have a difficulty in understanding that all men are created equal and they ought to have equal opportunities to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The display of nooses in Louisiana, that's part of the vestige where people still have this idea of second-class citizens. The idea that some people in the Senate can suggest that our resolution, H-Res 64, is too strong on what it says about what happened after the Civil War and during Jim Crow, shows that some members of the Senate need to get their history books out and wake up and dust off their claws and become 21st century Americans. This is a problem. We've hidden from it. We've got our heads in the sand like ostriches, and we need to rise up with strong backbones, face the facts, apologize for history, move forward into a better future. But apology and studies go toward the future, and we need to do that. Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much for this opportunity.